Salute ATP, it's your boy Claymore Rain, and this is that ATP Combat Media Show. Shout out to all my subscribers. If this is the first time tapping into content, I invite you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit your bell icon so you're getting alerts when all this content is dropping. Been a while since I dropped some content. I know you guys been following me on live. Shout out to my co-host Ray Davis. Shout out to the first winner of the first giveaway that we did for hitting that milestone of 1,000 subscribers. East Side Easy. Glad we're able to help. I hope that helps in some kind of way with your clothing line, all the things that he's trying to put together. But if this is your first time tapping in, hit the subscribe button, man. Hit your like buttons when you guys come in as well. Let's keep this in the algorithm. Let's talk about it. So Boots Ennis having his first event this weekend under the Matchroom banner. Eddie Hearn's trying to show and prove for his new customer, new fighter that he's promoting, Boots Ennis, and giving him the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Big move for Boots Ennis, and from what I understand, a partnership that he has with Eddie Hearn. So having a lot of his own fighters showcase on this card is a big deal for him. Now, Boots Ennis has been relatively inactive. If you guys really look at the broad spectrum of where he's been for the past 2 years, hasn't been as active as he would like to be, to say the least. Now, I know a lot of content creators and fans out there would like to say that him fighting once or twice a year is considered active. I think when you put it in perspective as to the history of boxing and how boxers used to be, that's not what you'd call active career. And like I said, according to Bozy, according to Boots, they were looking to be more active. That's why they went over to Matchroom. They didn't go to these other promotional platforms. They went over to Matchroom because of the activity, and Eddie Hearn also promising them getting one step closer to actually becoming undisputed champion at 147. Now, you guys understand and know also that Boots Ennis was in the midst of some crazy love triangle, right? That love triangle being between Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, and putting himself inside the middle of that, as Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford were working on unifying and making an undisputed champion in the welterweight division, the first in many of years. This fight was anticipated compared to the likes of a Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Marvin Hagler or Tommy Hitman Hearns or Roberto Duran versus, this was a legendary history-making fight. Legacy was written all inside of it, not only inside of the fight itself and how competitive it was going to be between these two slick, athletic power punchers, boxers, but also the undisputed title legacy. And Boots had to sit on the sideline, unfortunately, kind of wait these guys to iron it out. Now, everybody wanted to see Boots fight the winner of that fight, but you guys, if you don't know, you'll know now when I tell you that Boots Ennis basically sitting there waiting on a mandatory that he had to fight for the IBF title, had Terrence Crawford, who won the fight with Errol Spence, right, who took on the mandatory of Errol Spence. Keep up with me here. The mandatory for that IBF title, which Errol Spence had at the time, transferred over to Terrence Crawford, and Terrence Crawford had that mandatory. But let's remember that there was a rematch clause that Errol Spence activated to fight against Terrence Crawford. So that, once again, put Boots in the dark. And who was Boots going to fight against? A lot of the fights that he was trying to put against some of these other who are now interim or regular title holders in the Mario Barrioses, the Stanley Stanionis, the at the time, what's my guy's name? Keith Thurman, or even now with Brian Norman being in that position. But a lot of these guys weren't really picking up the phone to fight against Boots. Boots was trying to, and Virgil Ortiz, as a matter of fact, right, was also at 147 at that time, was looking to put these fights together and couldn't get it put together. The management he was in, I don't know if Boots was on the wrong side of the street, quote unquote, as that's a popular term being said today in boxing, or what the deal was, but ultimately ended up keeping him on the side. Terrence Crawford not being able to go ahead and accept that fight to defend his undisputed titles against Boots because he was tied up in a rematch clause. Now, as we guys know, present time being that rematch clause went null and void because Errol Spence did not what's the word I could look for to describe this properly, did not activate a fight date in time, and it pretty much expired and set Terrence Crawford free. The space wanted to see Terrence Crawford fight Boots Ennis, but Terrence Crawford had his own plans, right? Terrence Crawford wanted to move up in weight, potentially challenging Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez not being as open arms receive the opportunity or give Terrence Crawford an opportunity to fight him for his 168-pound super middleweight undisputed title. And Terrence, still interested, pushing for it, decided to make another move, right, guys? He activated a mandatory with the WBO to fight in the junior middleweight division of 154 pounds. As we know, in August 3rd, Terrence Crawford will be actually fighting for not the WBO title, because he would have fought the winner between Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora on that. Errol Spence stepped in there, took that opportunity, as Sebastian Fundora, it looks like, from what we understand, that there's conversations going on and negotiations for Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence to fight. The WBO went ahead and put that mandatory and activated on Sebastian Fundora. So Sebastian Fundora doesn't defend that WBO title against the mandatory at this moment being Terrence Crawford, then he will be releasing that belt, right? So right now on August 3rd, we have Terrence Crawford, right? We have Terrence Crawford, who's going to be fighting in Los Angeles at the BMO Stadium to fight against Ismail Madrimov, the current WBA champion, right? The current WBA champion. And also, what's also going to be on the line is that WBO title interim, right? So the winner of that fight will have that interim WBO title, which in turn puts him as a mandatory. Is the mandatory to Sebastian Fundora, but being that Sebastian Fundora will probably be vacating that belt, or the belt's going to be getting stripped from him, should I say, from the from the WBO. That's going to leave the winner of that fight between Ismail Madrimov and Terrence Crawford as the active WBO champion, or unified champion at that, being that the WBA title is going to be on the line as well. Now, I said a whole lot, right? I just try to put this on perspective to get some understanding that now we have Errol Spence, who's going to be fighting against Sebastian Fundora. He's going to be trying to collect himself a WBC title that Sebastian Fundora owns. We have Terrence Crawford, who's going to be fighting against Ismail Madrimov, trying to become a unified champion in the division. Now we have Boots Ennis, who's still at 147, trying to unify and become an undisputed champion, right? Well, look, man, at the end of the day, the love triangle can come full circle if Boots Ennis moves up to 154 pounds, right? I know he has aspirations of becoming an undisputed champion at 147, but being that he now holds a title in IBF, he's no longer eligible to become a mandatory for any of those guys to fight him. So really, those other champions in the division that will be raised to regular champions once Terrence Crawford, we're assuming and hoping, will vacate the belt he currently has at 147. Once he steps in the ring to fight Ismail Madrimov, then we'll see Mario Barrios become a regular WBC champion. We'll see Emilio Stanionis become the regular WBA or the super WBA welterweight champion. We'll see Brian Norman upgraded to a full WBO champion, right? And obviously Boots will be carrying it as the IBF champion, to see if Boots could coordinate fights with all these fighters to get on a mission to become undisputed. Now, that's going to have Boots in that division title for at least the next year and a half to get that done. And that's if everything works accordingly. That's if everything comes full circle and all these fights are able to get lined up and Eddie Hearn's able to make these fights come together to help him become undisputed. But, you know, with all the things that are showing up, when you look at the fight that Boots had scheduled with Cody Crowley getting canceled because Cody Crowley had an eye injury he was tending to. When you look at Mario Barrios potentially backing out of a fight opportunity with Boots Ennis because he was having a child. When you look at Stanionis, who doesn't seem to be showing any interest in fighting Boots Ennis, it seems like it's going to take a lot of vested interest money to get these fights set up. A, B, these guys are not in the same stable as Boots Ennis right now with Matchroom. You got Stanionis with PBC, you got Mario Barrios with the PBC, and you got Brian Norman, who I believe is over there with Top Rank. I believe that's where he's at, right? So at the end of the day, is Boots best just moving on, right? I understand Undisputed is an opportunity that he wants to, as far as legacy, put into his records, but at the same time, there's also a lot of legacy up at 154, right, guys? I mean, a fight with Terrence Crawford, if that were to happen, that would be up at 154. Boots is an IBF champion at 147 and could potentially get himself in a mandatory fight to maybe, you know, fight somebody to become a mandatory for that IBF title, challenge up. I can't remember who the champion is right now, 154, but challenge for that belt, put himself right in the conversation of Undisputed at 154. It's all possible if he allows Eddie Hearn to coordinate and put this together. And also, obviously, Terrence Crawford being up there gives us, the fans, an opportunity to see one of the best fights stylistically that we could think of being put together since Bud versus Errol the Truth Spence Jr., right? So a lot of people feel like that fight should be even more competitive. And honestly, you would expect it to be, because the fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence just wasn't that competitive. But at the end of the day, it's up to Boots, right? Boots is in control of his own destiny now, being with Eddie Hearn now, being in a partnership, owning his own promotional company. It's up to him and his team to kind of figure out what's the best move for them. As fans, we just want to see him active. 154 looks like one of those divisions where Boots can make a legacy for him. He can fight them fighters who escaped him at 147 in Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. He can become a unified champion up there, being that division happens to hold high the value of these belts. A lot of divisions, some divisions don't hold it that much. You got champions who are not that eager to become undisputed, especially when you're dealing with Jaron Boots Ennis. It looks like he has less of a chance of becoming somebody who's left out in the dark at 154. I can see him lining up fights with the likes of outside of the champions, or between a Sebastian Fundora or an Errol Spence or a Terrence Crawford. There's also big fights up there with Bakachuk. There's fights up there with Brian Mendoza. There's fights up there with Erickson Lubin. I mean, the list goes on and on. Tim Tszyu, Virgil Ortiz is up there now. So many big fights that could be made at 154. The ball is in Boots' corner. This fight getting ready to happen this weekend, that he's headlining the card out fighting against David Avanesian, a fighter who Terrence Crawford fought during the midst of that Errol Spence negotiation. Terrence did stop him, but it was still a fight where, Avanesian, was looking decent in it until it went where it went. He was landing some shots. Boots giving a dominant performance, stopping this guy, getting him out of here as quickly as possible, makes even more of an argument as to why we should see this fight between Boots, Jaron Boots Ennis, and Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, we also know that Turki Al-Sheikh is very interested in putting this fight together. This is a fight that he wants to see happen. So we know the financial backing is there, right? Terrence Crawford does have a mission he's on to go ahead and fight Canelo Alvarez and become a three weight class undisputed champion in the 4-belt era. He can also do that at 154, right? If he's able to line up these fights. An interesting fact, which I thought was kind of crazy, when the WBC actually announced that the winner between Terrence Crawford and Ismail Madrimov would become also the mandatory to fight against the winner of Sebastian Fundora and Errol Spence. Regardless, putting that WBC title on the line gives Terrence Crawford an opportunity to actually become a 3-belt unified champion at 154. So he's really close. If the stars align correctly for him, Terrence Crawford is also very close to becoming an undisputed champion at 154, and Boots Ennis can get right in that conversation, making him move up to 154 with the blessings and the backing of a Turki Al-Sheikh in the midst, and a promoter like Eddie Hearn, and these fighters all being close to the same stable right now, with the WBC being very cooperative of making the winner between Ismail Madrimov and Terrence Crawford a mandatory for that WBC title. We could be looking at another undisputed title run in 154 for any of these guys, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, or Jaron Boots Ennis. Well, you guys let me know what you think inside the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. What do you think? Should Boots stay at 147, continue his mission to become a 147-pound undisputed champion, even though with all of the actual obstacles and all the adversity he's been facing trying to get these fights? It's been very difficult for him to get these fights happening at 147. Granted, now he has a new team behind him with Eddie Hearn. Maybe Eddie Hearn could make some things happen that Cameron Duncan, rest in peace, wasn't able to put together, or that the PBC wasn't able to put together for him, or whoever else. Maybe Eddie Hearn just has that gold Midas touch to be able to go ahead and bring some life to Boots Ennis's aspirations and dreams. But worst case scenario, 154 is there for Boots Ennis. Some of the biggest fights that he could have on his record are up there, and Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Tim Tszyu, Virgil Ortiz. These are fights, especially when it comes to Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, and Virgil Ortiz, were fights that were there for him at 147 that may have escaped him, being that those guys decided to move up in weight and fight the 154 weight class division. He can go up there, find legacy up there, still find undisputed at 154. What do you guys think? Put it in the comments. Boots Ennis against David Avanesian, potentially laying the foundation to the big fight everybody wants to see, and that's Boots Ennis versus Terrence Crawford. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Guys, remember, like, comment, subscribe. Shout out to the whole entire ATP Combat Media family. The community is growing. I appreciate all of you guys. You guys stay tuned. Next week, we are doing another giveaway to celebrate the milestone 1,000 subscribers that this channel just hit. I appreciate all of you guys. And at this point, we out.